Hey guys, welcome to the Velodicted channel. Today, again, it's all about the Rose Pro SL 2000. I've now ridden it for almost 1 year and I covered 10,000 Ks on it. So now I want to review the bike, share my thoughts and show you some pros and cons about the bike. So stay tuned, let's get into it. Welcome to the review of the Rose Pro SL. Let's start with the frame of the Rose Pro SL. In my previous videos and in the unboxing I told you it's 1280 grams. It's a decent weight, it's an aluminum frame as you might know. Let's begin with the stiffness. In my opinion this bike is quite stiff. This frame is really responsive, stiff, and the transfer is quite instant in my opinion. This is due to the structure of the bike. As you can see, a quite beefy down tube, but also we have thin seat stays and this gives a bit more compliance in the rear end, but also where it's quite important, at the bottom bracket area there is lots of stiffness from what I can tell. What's also really nice is the smart welding technology. So the frame looks like a carbon frame, it's an aluminum frame, and I think this is a nice touch, at least for me. Coming to the paint job of the bike, well, I picked a black one. There's also a white one. The white one is glossy. This is not really matte, but also not really glossy, something in between. So if you want to clean the bike, it's a bit of an issue. So take this in consideration. Dust and mud sticks a little bit more on this frame like it would be on a glossy frame, I guess. It's quite reliable. I have no chips on the down tube and neither on the seat tube. This is not the case in this at this frame, so the paint job is pretty sturdy and robust. All in all, I think the paint job is pretty reliable. Also here, where your knees rubs from time to time, there is no issue. I think this is a positive aspect as well. Coming to the third point, I want to talk about the bearings. The bearings from the head tube, but also from the bottom bracket. I have so far no problems. I haven't heard anything from them. They are moving freely to this point, and so far I can tell good bearings. Cable routing. What I really like about the bike is the way the cables are routed through the frame, and especially where the entry holes are positioned. In this case they are positioned at the front of the head tube and they don't get into the bike on the down tube. By doing that you won't have any rubbing towards the head tube, and therefore the paint job won't get loose or get worn out. So this is a point you don't need to have to worry about. I think this is a positive aspect. What's noticeable from time to time is some noise from the down tube. And I tell you the scenario: if you are in the lowest gears and you're rocking upwards the hill and you're moving the handlebars from side to side, you hear a noise from the down tube, and I guess it's from the looseness of the lowest gear. So there is no tension in the cable, and then the cables are a bit loose and they can move a bit, and then you have a crackling noise from the down tube. It's a bit annoying. Just notice, be aware of it. Sticking with the frame, maybe you want to put in 28 tires on your bike and going a bit more comfortable, on a comfortable side. The rear maybe supports a 28 tire, depends on what tire and what wheelset you use. But the front is quite narrow, so I don't recommend put anything bigger than a 25 mm on it. Coming now to the geometry of the bike, the pure geometry at itself. So it's an entry-level bike, not declared as a racing bike. It's more like a touring bike for longer rides. They say it's for longer rides and more relaxed, more comfortable positioning on the bike. For sure, you have a longer head tube and a shorter top tube approaching this. And out of the box, this bike is quite upright. I was used to my old Peugeots, and those have long top tubes and they are really slammed, so you're sitting quite long on them. And coming from these bikes onto this, it was quite like I was riding I don't know, a touring bike. It wasn't really feeling or fitting my purposes. So what I did, slamming the stem and also changing the stem, because the stem was way too short. But keeping in mind, overall it's quite relaxed geometry from the beginning. About the comfort of the frame, well, it has a carbon fork, but it is aluminum. The seat post is aluminum, and therefore for the most people I think it feels a bit harsh. For me personally, it's no problem at all. As long as you stay on nice ground, on nice tarmac, and there's no problem. But going onto some roads with gravel, you will notice it's a bit harsh. So keeping that in mind. I found steering on this frame quite good. So this is no tweaky or twitchy or something like that. It's quite responsive. So I've talked about the frame. Now I want to talk about the group set, because this is nothing Rose is responsible for. But if you buy this bike, you get a full Shimano 105 5800 11-speed group set. And this is, I think, one of the coolest things on this bike purchase. You get a full Shimano group set. You have the shifters, you have the brakes, you have the crankset, you have the cassette, the rear derailleur as well, the front derailleur, and also the chain. And what blew me away was the cable routing, especially, is also from Shimano. And this is something the most manufacturers don't do. They put on cheaper cables, and in this case you have completely Shimano cables, and this makes the difference to me, I think. So overall, after 10,000 Ks, I can say the shifting is still crisp. Really, I haven't done a lot. What I've changed, I tell you in a second. But overall, I can say shifting feels still good, still crisp, braking still good, still crisp. And let's get into it a bit more in detail. So braking performance, the front braking, the front brake and the braking itself feels responsive, really responsive, I have to say. A bit different in the rear end because the routing is through the bike, and the rear brake feels a bit spongy, but I don't think it's the brake itself, the brake caliper. I think it's the routing through the top tube. I hear some friction noise there, so some of your energy won't get transferred to the rear brake, and so modulation is a bit of an issue in the rear brake. Overall, it's okay. In the front, it's super. In the rear, it's okay. Let's move on to the cables. As I mentioned, the cables are awesome. The brake cables and also the shifting cables are Shimano ones. And what I really like is how they route them, some minor details, especially at the rear derailleur. There's a lot of management how to seal the cable that there won't get any dirt in. So there is lots of sealing stuff, and the entries are nice. There are ferrules, and this system of cable routing works pretty well together, and this is one reason why the shifting still remains like the first day, in my opinion. The brake calipers, I'm convinced by the 105 brake calipers. The modulation is quite good. This is one thing I like. I like there is no sponginess overall. You push the lever, there's a nice modulation, and they are super stiff. So this is an overall good brake caliper. And also the brake pads which come, these are also Shimano ones. After 10,000 Ks I still have the original ones, and there is lots of padding on it. Same for the crankset. I'm really happy with it. Shifting is really awesome. So upshifting and downshifting from the small to the big and vice versa. It's really nice. I haven't had any problems so far. And furthermore, I like the stiffness of the cranks. There is no rubbing, even at cross-chaining. There's nothing to say about it. 105 does the job here quite well. In the rear, I still have the stock cassette. It's the 1132. It's still my first cassette. 10,000 Ks on it. You will see some cocks are more worn out than others, like the 11 or the 32. The ones you won't use as often as the cocks in the middle of the cassette, that's for sure. But all in all, shifting performance remains the same since day one. Maybe you have some hesitates in split seconds, but overall it's really performing well with all the other shifting components. The chain is the second one. I bought exactly the same. It's the Shimano 105 group set specific chain, and I was happy with the performance. The first lasts for 4,000 Ks, and then the chain snapped, unfortunately. But the first chain had gone through the winter season, so the first chain have seen way more salt, way more grind, and rain as well. And the second one, it's over 6,000 Ks and still works pretty well, but it have seen so far just the summer side of the year, and a bit more of care from my side, because I don't want to have this second chain just again for only 4,000 Ks. So here we go, 2,000 Ks more than the other chain, and I'm pretty impressed with that. Coming to the shifting and micro adjustment of the shifting. So as you might maybe know, it allows you to cross chain, means from the big cock to in the front and the big cock in the rear. It's technically possible, and approaching this you can have some opinions in micro adjusting. So there is something like a half step, and so the front derailleur moves inwards a bit, so there is nothing rubbing, and this feature doesn't work as good as day one. This is due to many factors. In first place, I guess the cable friction increased over the time. That's the main reason. I guess the micro adjustment won't work as good as day one, but I'm fine with it because I don't cross chain a lot nowadays. Cross chaining costs a lot of watt and a lot of chains, so I try to prevent that. What's also worth to mention on this bike is the gear choice. I think Rose did a great job in putting in a compact chain in the front with 50-34, and in the rear you have the 11 to 32 cassette, and I think for a beginner this is a quite good choice. So you cover big range of gear ratios from a pretty low gear with 34, 32, it's almost 1:1, and 50/11, so it's quite big spreaded. After talking about the frame and also the group set, let's talk about the third big issue, and this is the whole wheel set the bike comes with. This is the Mavic Axiom WTS, and it came with 25mm Ixion Pro tires. So this was a system wheel set, they call it. Let's talk about the weight of the wheel set. Okay, it's reasonable for the pricing, and it's an entry-level road wheel set, but I think it could get worse. I think it's about 1800 grams. It's reasonable. It's nothing super heavy, but it's also nothing like a carbon rim. But for the pricing and as a whole, I think it's okay. Stiffness of the wheel set. Well, due to the less spoke counts and also the shallow aluminum rim, it is less stiff, so it's not the stiffest one. Therefore, they wanted to build a somehow light wheel set. You feel that it's a bit flexy, especially when you're rocking out of the saddle, and then you feel, oh, it flexes, especially in corners. If you're cornering hard and lay down very deep, you will feel the flexiness of the rims, and for me this is a reason why I don't corner as hard as I maybe could, because I'm a bit scared. I don't want to fall over. Stiffness, not that much. But I haven't had any brake rub. Don't matter how hard I rock the bike, I never had some rubbing at the frame or something like that. This never happened at all. Spoke tension, I had some issues with spokes, but exclusively to the rear wheel. Front wheel is perfect. It makes nice sounds, so the tension is even throughout the whole rim. In the rear, from day one I had some issues. There's a bit play, and furthermore the blades tend to loosen a bit, so some blades were really loose. I re-tensioned them, but this becomes again and again. This is a problem I still have to worry about, so I tensioned them a bit up and then they got loose again and again. This won't cause any issues. So far I haven't had any issues, but what's funny about it, the bladed spokes are straight normally for use this way, and if they become loose they turn, and then you have the broad area of the blade heading towards the wind, so a bit hilarious. They got loose and your aero benefit decreases. Take that in consideration. I don't think it's an overall problem. Coming to the hubs and the bearings, the same here. Bearings in the front, top. Bearings in the rear, top as well. There is no noise. There is no indication that there is something in it like sand or debris or so. I'm quite happy with that. They spin forever if I turn them. In the rear, coming to the hub and there is a bit of play, as I told you before. So if you're moving the rear wheel, you'll feel a bit of play. I think this comes from the hub. Even pulling the cassette from left to right, you feel a bit of play. The braking surface, so aluminum braking surface. So far, in the beginning the braking was superb, and then it went to super. So I still think the braking performance from the rims is super. Even in wet, in dry more of course, and in wet they perform good as well. It's never ever sketchy or something like that. Even in wet descents, no problem at all in my opinion. rim profile. It's a bit old school, it's narrow. With the original Ixiom tires, the tire was fitting quite good on the rim, but I obviously swapped the tires after maybe also 4000 Ks. I bought the Conti Grand Prix. Those tires are a bit wider. You have this kind of mushrooming, so they are smaller in the inside of the rim and then they getting broader. So you have this kind of mushrooming effect. Therefore the surface transition isn't that smooth, meaning less aero, but this is marginal gains, and I think for the everyday rider this is nothing to concern about. But I think it's worth to mention that this is a more traditional rim profile, quite narrow, and so thicker tires causes mushrooming. Now we had the three main parts: the frame, the group set and the wheel set. Now it's about the components the bike comes with. And let's start with the handlebar tape. This came with a physique handlebar tape. It's a bit soft, but it's quite thin. It's a good bar tape, and there is still the stock handlebar tape. So I'm riding 10,000 Ks with this handlebar tape, and it's still holding up well. We have a bit of rub on the hot spots where I grip the most, but overall, I guess this shows that this is a pretty good choice in terms of handlebar tape, and Physique did a good job on this. The handlebars itself, it's an aluminum handlebar from Ritchie, and it has this modern shape in the drops. So you have these edgy ones, not this whole curved one, and this is a bit of a taste issue, I guess. It wasn't my first choice, but it came with the bike, so now I'm got used to it. Feels okay. It's not the handlebar for everyone, but I think the width is okay and the drop is also okay. The stiffness I'm quite impressed with. The stem was also a Ritchie one, and it was 90 centimeters, so way too short for me because I have a long torso. So I changed it to a Physique stem with minus 21 degrees. It's a bit aggressive, and now I have this tower of spacers, and I don't want to cut off the fork. This is something I have to deal with now. I mentioned the seat post earlier. It's an aluminum seat post from Ritchie. There's nothing to say about it. The adjustment screws for the saddle, it's quite traditional. 2-bolt system, nothing fancy like a 1-bolt or something like that. It's really stiff. There's nothing, no compliance at all. There's no flex. It's a seat pin, really what it has to be. Summing up the whole thing, I like the geometry of the frame set, I like the build quality of the frame set, I like the paint job, it's pretty reliable, and I like that you can tweak the geometry into something more racier. And I think the frame stiffness is really good. I think the second big plus on the bike is the group set throughout Shimano 105, and I'm really pleased with the shifting performance and braking performance, and this is a 100% plus. I really like the componentry on this bike. Third point, the wheel set. It's a reasonable wheel set. It does the job here. In this price range you have not so much options, so I think the wheel set is good, it performs good. And the fourth point, the accessories on the bike, the handlebars, the seat pin, and also the stock saddle that this comes with the bike. I was really pleased. Please take in mind, this is my personal opinion. I just wanted to mention them, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, but this is my opinion about the bike. I hope you liked it. Subscribe to the channel, comment if you like, give me a thumbs up if you like. I hope we see us in the next video. So, I'm out, Velodicted, bye.